Hello and welcome to Companion Call. I'm Shivani Joshi with my producer Angelina Mintz on 1680 The Crow. The wellness industry is a trillion-dollar business, from Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop to golden milk lattes. Wellness has transformed into a trend, becoming unattainable, elite, and expensive. Not only that, everyone in these spaces all look a certain way: slender, conventionally attractive white people. Whiteness thrives in these spaces, whereas people of color are often not included, despite many of these holistic wellness practices, such as yoga, acupuncture, and ancient medicines originating from Asia, Africa, and indigenous cultures. So, how do we practice self-care in colonized spaces? And how do we feel good about indulging in self-care when certain bodies and appearances are made to feel like they aren't part of this conversation? Today, I'm talking to Suman Kandola, director of the documentary Identity of Wellness and a personal branding coach, and Irene Lowe, a yoga asana teacher and a founder of Women of Color Summit. Both of these women have lots of experience in navigating wellness spaces, and are here to have a conversation about the commodification and whitewashing of wellness and how to make wellness equitable. So, Suman, you've produced this documentary where you're trying to figure out your journey with wellness and where you fit in. What have you found your definition of wellness to be?
I think wellness to me is how deep you can connect to yourself. I think that's the true definition for myself, but it's how can you, if you were to take it to a surface level definition, like how can you take care of yourself?
And how did you find yourself on this path?
Yeah, I think rock bottom. Yeah, I think that's like how everybody starts, right? It's like you go through things and then you realize you're like, hey, like the way that I'm dealing with things is not serving me anymore, and you just start to get smarter in that space. You start to realize that you are something that you also need to take care of. Your mind is something you need to take care of. Your body, your spiritual energy, like all of that needs maintenance. And I think it's one of those things that snowballs over time. It's not something that you learn all at once.
Yeah. And Irene, you refer to yourself as a space holder in yoga, and you are the founder of Women of Color Summit. So how did you find yourself in this path?
Yeah, I found myself in this path after really buying into hustle culture, really buying into the model minority myth, and really staying small. You know, being silent, not trusting myself, not believing in my own intuition. And it was after a long time, it was kind of like having this moment where yoga really saved me. And yoga asana, absolutely, but also learning more about the yogic philosophy and really finding a deep connection to the teachings there. And it was then that I started to learn a little bit more, do a teacher training, and then found that I really enjoyed holding space for others to also come back to themselves. And as I was getting deeper into this journey, I was starting to see things, the problems in the wellness world and in the yoga world, where I was starting to question things, right? Because there is a lot of inequity, and is a lot of white century, and there is a lot of tokens in the wellness space that I felt, well, there's a disconnect here between what we're saying and what we're actually doing.
Could you tell me maybe like the first time you navigated these spaces, and how did you feel?
Yeah, I think when I first started going in these spaces, I didn't really think anything. I don't think I had a relationship with what it meant to be a person of color in any space. I went to these spaces, I felt good, and I went back. And it was a free sauna. You know what I mean? And so I think it was when I started having my own understanding of what it means to be a person of color, what it means to be a woman in society, what it means to be a woman of color, that I really started to recognize my positionality in these different spaces. And then you start to have more of those conversations of how can my mom come here and how can she feel safe and confident and comfortable and come here for what she came here for, rather than being met with insecurities or fears that are so outside of herself.
That's so powerful. I just want to say that because I feel like I think about that all the time, like whether my mom would feel comfortable in these spaces. You know, I love that. And yeah.
It's so true what you touched on, which is that you're not aware because these things are so normalized.
Yeah.
Even when I do trauma-informed trainings, sometimes it's interesting to see the response that I get from other folks of color where they're like, well, isn't yoga supposed to be trauma-informed? I'm like, yeah, it is, but we're in the West and it's not. So we have to talk about these things. I was recently in Bali, and a lot of my teachers, they weren't really marketing themselves or talking about decolonization or how to be a trauma-informed space holder, but they were just doing these things. They were just doing them. And I thought that was so powerful.
What were some things that they were, I guess, doing to showcase that?
In yoga asana spaces and yoga asana classes, it's pretty much a fitness class a lot of the time. So some instructors will perhaps yell at you, be a little bit cheeky, take things a little bit casually, may not understand that they are stepping on boundaries, right? Telling you what your body should feel like in a pose, and not really giving you room to explore it. And that's very normalized. But when I was in Bali learning with my teachers, Ashtanga teachers, as well as Hatha yoga teachers, and Ashtanga is a pretty disciplined asana style, but my teacher, Nikki G, was just so loving, and she never once made us feel like we had to do a pose. And she never had to introduce herself as a trauma-informed holder. She just was doing it. And it's how you are reading the energy and reading the room and putting the students first, not putting yourself as the teacher first, not putting this hierarchy over other students. It's a different energy when you are in a space like that.
So kind of part of that question as well, what can we do to access wellness options that are like within our means? So again, a lot of wellness is kind of branded as luxury. It's kind of expensive, as I said before, and almost seems unattainable. So what can we do to make it so that it's easier for us to achieve?
Well, the first thing is realizing you don't need to buy anything in order to feel well. Right?
100%.
I
Kale.
mean,
Drop my Sephora checkout bag right there.
Well, that right there, right? That right there. That's this perception that wellness is stuff.
Yeah.
Wellness is not stuff.
For
Wellness
sure.
is a state of being, right? And so it's like Irene is saying, you don't need to actually have money to do that, right? Meditation is free.
Yeah.
You can go on Google, you can go on YouTube.
Yeah.
And the thing is just like, actually, I want you to lead with this because I have a thought, but I want to see where you take it first. Yeah.
okay, I did just want to respond to your little Sephora joke because I did just want to say, this is where I'm going to take it. But, there is this this concept of care, right? And different types of care. So one of them is soothing. So these are the activities where you may be feeling unwell, and so you want to distract yourself. So that's watching trashy TV, that's eating junk food, comfort food, right? And yes, buying your something from Sephora. And that is a type of care, and it's important to have that. But then there are all these other types of care that come with it, like the care of going to therapy, the care of journaling, the caring of having supportive networks and supportive friendships, and also community care, knowing that you are a neighborhood where the government makes sure that the streets are nicely kept, right? And that there's parks and libraries near your place. These are all things that we need for care. So some of these things you can do for yourself, but the other things we as a society need to decide, do we want to invest in that? Is that where we're going to put our resources to?
Well, I would say one of the best lessons that I learned through the documentary was knowing what you want. Number one, it's like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a workout? Are you looking for that soothing? Are you looking for comfort and care? Do you know do you know yourself and know what you need in this situation? That's key, right? So it's like, that's going to help you make the decision between going to yoga, going to the gym, going for a walk, going for a swim, talking to your best friend. I think then when you're accessing yoga spaces, it's like then also knowing what do you need. There's a little bit of responsibility on the person who's also taking the class, right? Like you got to know what the different classes offer. Do you need something that's restorative and where you don't really want to get off your mat, or do you want something that's more like, I don't even know, like this is Irene's lane, right? Yeah. But it's like, do you want something that's going to put you more into flow? Do you want to kick ass that day, right? So it's like knowing what you want. And then it's also about finding spaces that offer different opportunities for different people, right? There are a lot, like literally Irene was just saying this, like there's a lot of different people who are having the same conversations, and some of those people went and made a business out of it. Yeah. Right? Some of those people have sliding scales, community scales. If you cannot find a space near you where you can get a free yoga class, you can take it on YouTube. You can go to a karma class. There's a lot of options, right? And then it also goes to priorities. So this is me speaking from somebody at my lens and my level of access and financial stability and whatnot, right? But it's like, what are you prioritizing financially then, if you're saying that you also want and need these things?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, I just want to go back to an earlier question that we had here. So I did ask you, both of you, like, how did you initially feel when you navigated these spaces? So you said initially you guys didn't even realize that you were thinking of those things. When did it finally hit you? And I guess, how did it feel when you did realize, like, okay, yeah, I'm like a person of color in these spaces and I feel ...
I think for me, like when I made a documentary. I feel like I just wanted to know more. I got curious. That's my personality. I got curious, and then I also, like I said, I found those spaces where I do feel welcomed. And there's a space that I live downtown, and there's not a lot of people of color who go there, but I don't feel othered anymore. So it's like, it's again, that going deeply within yourself and like navigating the blinders that you have on with yourself, and how do you yourself enter those spaces? Why are you identifying as yourself as the one who's different every time that you enter this space?
So you said anymore. What happened for you to have that epiphany?
I just don't think that I value the things that I used to value, or see things the way that I used to see them, right? It's like, I am there for my practice, for me to feel good. I know why I'm there now. Before, I didn't always know why I was there. You know what I mean? Like now I know, like, it's a beautiful sound bowl yoga class and I love it. And that's why I go, Like I don't care about who's next to me on the mat. The teacher's great, and that's why I go.
Yeah. Lovely.
Setting your right expectations.
Yeah.
For me, I started realizing it when I was starting to teach, and I use social media as my model of what does a teacher look like? What does a teacher do? And I saw that career or that job trajectory and couldn't see myself on it, was feeling really frustrated and limited, was starting to question things I was seeing. Because I am marketing as my background, I saw a lot of marketing from yoga teachers, feeling a little bit didn't feel right. And that's really when I started to decolonize my yoga practice, decolonize wellness, and really start to identify with my different intersectional identities. And I think there's a lot of healing that can be done when we are aware that we are people of color, and also not allowing that to hold us back as well. I think it's so powerful. I mean, I co-created the Women of Color Summit because I wanted a healing and creative space for other women of color and non-binary people of color. And I love that. But that doesn't mean that everything that I do is just for one community that I have, my Patreon club. It's actually quite mixed in terms of ethnicities online on my Patreon. So I love to hold space with people who, at the end of the day, share the same values on wellness and spirituality as me.
So just in closing, if you guys can tell me, like, how do you practice self-care in colonized spaces, and how can we decolonize?
I'll let Irene go first.
Decolonization starts from within. So first you have to dismantle, encounter and then dismantle the colonizer within. So because we all live in this Western society, there is someone in you that believes in things that we have been conditioned to believe, which is that whiteness is beauty, skinny means you're healthy, and that it's better to always speak loudest and fastest rather than being still, taking your time to rest, and thinking about yourself not just in terms of what you can do, what you can produce, but like who you are, stripped away of all of your titles. And so that for me is one of the things that you can do to dismantle this sort of colonized thinking, which is first admitting that you are also a part of the problem, right? Like, I find that we sometimes other and we say, I'm not like that. I'm a good person. Yes, you are a good person, but you're also capable of saying and doing harmful things. So if you can't admit that, you can't take accountability and you can't change. And like this goes for everyone, right? Like as a person of color, you can also be capable of perpetuating other racist stereotypes and racist thinking against yourself and to other people. Like, you know, there's like this competitiveness that happens that divides you from other women as well as women of color. And for me, I love collaborating with other women of color because I love it when they succeed. When it's like what you're saying, Sue, like when you see someone that looks like you succeed, you just feel so inspired. And I want us to feel like that rather than feeling like, oh, well, there can only be one of us in the room, or feeling like we have to be in that room. Not limiting ourselves to this one vision, this one imagination of what the world can be, of who we can be.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just like listening.
You're like, pause.
Yeah, 100%. You do need to really look deep within your own layers of colonization that you have within yourself and like start to work through that. You know, something I wanted to say to what you just said though is, let's use the women on women example, right? This is a way that you can look at it. It's like at one point there was this idea of like there can only be one. Oh, but like if they're there, like how can I also be there? Because it used to feel like a checkbox on like, oh, I have my diversity check in here.
Yeah.
But you can create so many of your own spaces now. But just because that's a reality doesn't mean you can't or don't go through the emotional up-leveling that you need to go through in order to be able to actually occupy that type of consciousness, right? So it's like, it takes time for me to know that you guys can both be successful and incredible, and that doesn't take away from my success. And my success doesn't take away from your success, right? Yeah. That's how you build community. You, like, if we circle it all the way back, that same community I built within myself of knowing that my abundance isn't in jeopardy because of somebody else's abundance. That's that inner work, right? Yeah. And when it comes to practicing self-care, like what does self-care really mean to you? Like that's how I would ask somebody, like, what do you do when you feel good? What do you feel when you're not thinking? What do you feel when you're rejuvenated? How do you feel when you are soothing yourself, right? Yeah. And it's finding those answers within yourself. I think we search outside of ourselves a lot, right? Yeah. And it's like, how can we become like our greatest teachers again? Yeah, it's a sticky combo.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Ooh, thank you.